Wow, it has been a fat minute since I've posted. We can all thank the completely unreliable Alienware brand for that. One pump goes out and it's nearly $300 to fix it. Yeah, no. So, while I haven't been able to play games and gather footage like normal, this PC less time has given me the opportunity to focus on something new. Today's video is an ostentatious original, where I'll be sharing a story with all of you. One with a darker tone, as I tell a more horror-bound tale. Now, I know this is the biggest shift on this channel so far, but I ask for those of you accustomed to my regular videos to give this story a shot, and let me make you feel something. Since the start of this channel, I've only really displayed my funnier, more chaotic side, so this video is here to show another, a side that could mean a lot more for this channel. So, I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, The Fire Within. As the sun veiled itself behind the mountain peaks, anguish grew within him. He knew what would come next. Without shelter, they're easy prey for whatever was out there. He hastened his pace as he moved towards the town ahead. Questions of what this world had become permeated through his mind. Only days had gone by since the world was plunged into chaos, and he had lived a rather normal life before that. An average man, lost in the sea of people living lives just as complex as his. He lived by a strong moral compass, a pacifist by nature. Not that any of that would matter now. But approaching the town, his train of thought would be disrupted as he heard a guttural screech off in the distance, centering him back into the moment before spiraling into more useless threads of thought. He would make his way into the nearest building, not paying attention to which, seeing that the town looked as if it had been abandoned for some time, with bricks that had started to fall apart, leaving holes in the walls, left to be covered in the overgrowth from nature's lifelong battle with the man-made. Faded signs advertised products lost to time, found only in the weathered paper, and vehicles were scattered along the street side. Some held up by bricks with tires that were missing, and others with windshields that seemed to have caved in years ago. Entering the fairly small building, he found it to be unusually dark, filling him with a sense of unease, a feeling that he would end up ignoring as he trudged deeper into this false sanctuary. After walking for what felt like an unusually long amount of time, his attention would be caught by the faint orange glow that crept from around the corner. As a chill escaped him, creeping along his spine, he would find himself instinctually moving towards that light, and before he even realized, there he stood in front of the roar of a fire. Warmth grew over him as the flames flickered, crackling as it continues in its almost rhythmic dance. Regaining his footing he didn't know he had lost, he finally found the frame of mind to take in the space around him. Looking from the fire to the bricks that surrounded the heated dance, it wasn't long before he noticed the walls that seemed to endlessly crawl up, lined with books of various colors and sizes. And as he took in the rest of his surroundings, he would notice the countless amount of shelves that seemed to go on forever, all filled in with books, although more sparsely than the tightly packed walls. Looking for how he got into the endlessly sprawling room, he couldn't see an entrance. He pondered on how he got in, or how he was supposed to get out. He started to pace through one of the rows of shelves, trying to find an exit to the room. Walking past the books, he was brought back to a simpler time. A time before the chaos. A time before even his adulthood. A time where he wasn't bothered by the real world, but where he could live in worlds of his own. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he thought of his mother. He thought of her library. A small room with shelves lined with literature from various authors, stories that ranged from the events of the real world to exaggerated tales of fantasy. She had taken pride in the books she collected, the books she had read. It made sense. In place of her empathy, she used her intellect. Before he could finish that thought, he was interrupted by the sight of the same fireplace he had been walking away from just moments ago. From the dance of the flame to the bricks that bled into the endless wall of books. It was all the same. But how could that be? He didn't remember turning around, so how was this possible? Not being able to process what just happened, he decided to traverse the columns instead of the rows. Maybe he'd just taken the wrong way. and so he started to pace. He lacked any sense of urgency, as if he were procrastinating, worried as to what he would find at the end, but he still kept on track, letting his mind wander so that his current predicament wouldn't further deteriorate his sanity. But as he thought, his mind kept drifting to worries, fears that he deserved this, that this situation was a product of his own imperfections. When he was younger, he always thought of himself as a god, a role model for a stronger sense of living, but as he aged, he found himself attracted to sins, making mistakes that shatter his own worldview. Confronted by his own humanity, he had struggled to come to terms that he was no more perfect than the people around him, but he never truly realized that his mistakes didn't define him, that it wasn't the person who he had been, but the person he was, the changes he made to become better, the distance he created from his past. But what did that matter now? In a dying world, morality meant nothing, when all you could do was try to survive. But yet, his mind was plagued. Even when it didn't matter, it still meant something to him. But as his mind further darkened from his inability to let go, the sound of something crashing onto the floor would shake him back to reality. Frozen in fear, it would take moments going by before he would regain his nerves and shakily make his way towards the sound, carefully peering over the side of each shelf he passed, until eventually laying eyes on a book that laid open on the ground. Going over to it, he picked it up, noticing a picture of an almost familiar woman on the page. She had black, wavy hair, reminiscent of an ocean at night, that fell to her sides, framing a face with tight features. She looked tired, having dark patches that consumed her eyes, rivaling the color of her hair. But more than that, her features were wrong. Her eyes were glossed over, almost milky, staring into an abyss with no end. Her mouth stretched into a grim frame. She looked as if she were in pain. And in that moment of realization of who he was looking at, he felt eyes on him. And as he brought his gaze up, he briefly locked eyes with something staring him down with a dull orange glow from the other side of the shelf, before it quickly rose to reveal its tall, slender figure, with gray, rotting flesh that tightly grasped onto the bone, shown through the tattered rag that only covered some areas of its unnerving frame. Petrified by the realization he was not alone, it took him only a moment to realize he was running, twisting and turning through various shelves in hopes of losing whatever that was. But as he moved, the sounds of footsteps echoed throughout his mind, growing louder and louder, faster and faster, soon completely taking over any thought in his head, until all he could hear was each footstep thundering through his mind, growing closer to him, and as that ever-pounding drum was right behind him, it stopped. And so did he. Not out of want or desire, but there he stood again, confronted by the fire. However, this time, a book laid in the light of the rhythmic dance. Even from where he stood, he can see the page that was open, how it faced him, meant to be seen. And as those milky eyes stared back at him, a flame leapt from the fire, landing directly onto the page. And before he was able to do anything to stop it, without its brick-laid stage, the dance continued to grow, crawling across book and shelf, until the room around him was engulfed in flame, taunting him with its dance. The flicker of flames, the music of fire, drowned his thoughts. He grew hot as the light consumed him, and then, like a burning page, the room started to ash away, revealing holes of nothing but white, and as the floor gave way under him, he found himself falling. He felt like a speck rolling down a freshly opened canvas, dirtying the purity of the white around him. As he fell, fear would grasp onto him, not knowing where he would land or how. He shut his eyes, only to be greeted back to him falling in the empty sea of white. Confused and panicked by his inability to escape, there he fell, in what would seem to be his own purgatory. Was this death? Falling in nothing, surrounded by no one? He couldn't accept that. He started to flail, trying to move somewhere other than down. But when that didn't work, he realized there was only one thing he hadn't tried. He opened his eyes. The chatter of the audience filled the room, endless conversations with no way to decipher what any one person says, a hum of voices. There he stood on a set of metal bleachers surrounded by his peers, all dressed up for their performance. Looking out on the crowd, he realized a seat was left open, her seat. Crestfallen, he looked around the bleachers, realizing everyone was turned from him. Surrounded by the backs of his peers, there was nowhere for him to move. But he needed to go. He shouldn't have been there. He knew he wasn't welcomed. As a tear escaped him, it rolled down his cheek, letting go, ready to embrace the cool metal floor. Splashing onto the bleachers, the room went silent. With everyone now facing him, he realized that what stood around him, what sat in the audience, was nothing more than mannequins. But yet, burning into him, eyes were hidden, shielding his gaze to better see the audience. Far in the back, he saw the dull, orange gaze that he met in the library. Landing with a thud, he let out a grunt as pain shot through his body. He looked around in front of him. The room was dark, everything illuminated in a dull gray, making the room feel cold. Although he couldn't make out anything in the room, it felt familiar, but the pain he felt left him immobile. As he lay there, a warmth would slowly creep up his body, and as it crept up towards his face, it would be accompanied by a faint orange glow illuminating the area around him. Unease churned in his stomach. With the little strength he had left, he pushed himself up to discover the source of the light. Shifting his gaze up, there he saw it, looming tall above him. Decayed skin gripped onto bone, wearing tattered cloth that once used to be clothing, but now looked like nothing more than rags that molded to the flesh. And as he finally fixated on the face, he would notice that it didn't have eyes, but instead, orange light danced inside its orifices. However, what would truly disturb him is that when he took in all the details of his face, it was him. So, you made it to the end. Whether it be because I asked or because you enjoyed it, I do deeply appreciate that. I will say this video is not the complete story I'm trying to tell here, but I needed to gauge interest before I delve into telling the whole story. So if you did enjoy this video, please let me know. This is a type of content I would greatly enjoy expanding on, but that's only if it is something that you all are interested in. So the amount of likes and comments will greatly impact the release of the finale to this story. But with all that said, I just want to once again thank you all for watching today's video, and I can't wait to see you all next time.